Madam President.
Senator from Texas is recognized.
I thank the senator from Wyoming for his powerful remarks, and I thank each of the senators who have worked with me, both Republicans and Democrats, in our successful effort for over a year to stop the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Successful right until Joe Biden became president. I want to talk now about the precise dangers that are posed by the completion of Nord Stream 2. Many agree it would be a catastrophe for the security of the United States and for our European allies. Nord Stream 2, if it goes online, would double the gas flowing from Russia to Germany while circumventing American allies that Putin targets militarily, diplomatically, and commercially. As a result, if Nord Stream 2 goes online, it will expose Ukraine and Poland to deep, long-term dangers, and it will leave them vulnerable the next time Russia targets them for aggression. Right now, 1/3 of Russian gas exports to Europe travel through Ukraine. That provides Ukraine a curious kind of protection because Putin knows that he can't endanger that energy infrastructure without endangering his economic line to the world. With Nord Stream 2, Putin and Russia are given, by Joe Biden, by Kamala Harris, effectively open season on Ukraine. And when a year from now, we see Russian tanks in Ukraine, we will remember this moment that it was Joe Biden's surrender to Putin on Nord Stream 2 that enabled Russia to carry out that aggression. If Nord Stream 2 goes online, it will enrich Putin with billions of dollars to direct towards his malign activities. And by the way, if you don't want to take my word for it, here's what the Polish Prime Minister said about Nord Stream 2, that Nord Stream 2, quote, strengthens Russia's power, helps President Putin to build a military power, and helps to intimidate other nations. In addition, if Nord Stream 2 goes online, it will solidify Russian energy dominance at the expense of European energy diversification. If Nord Stream 2 goes online, it will deepen the corruption that tragically is endemic across Russia's energy sector, and it will export more of that corruption to Europe. But I want to talk a bit more about the crushing, overarching danger of Russia using Nord Stream 2 for blackmail and for coercion. Putin uses energy as a weapon. We've seen that pattern over and over again. He uses energy for blackmail and coercion. He turns it off or on to punish resistance to his expansionism. This is a real, acute, and proven threat. Russia turned off the gas to Europe in the winter months of 2006 and again in 2009 because of political disputes. The Kremlin company that owns and would run Nord Stream 2, Gazprom, has repeatedly cut off gas to Ukraine during political crises. It's open blackmail, and because of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, Putin will have more power to blackmail our friends in Europe. And it is not only me, it's not only Republicans, indeed it's not only Republicans and Democrats in Congress who understand the magnitude of this threat. Our European allies understand fully just how disastrous Nord Stream 2 would be. Ukrainian President Zelensky has said that it is, quote, flat out wrong not to notice that Nord Stream 2 is a dangerous weapon, not only for Europe, not only for Ukraine, but for the whole of Europe. I want you to pause and reflect. President Zelensky of Ukraine said this pipeline is a dangerous weapon directed at Ukraine and the whole of Europe. Why is it being built? Because Joe Biden decided to give it as a gift to Vladimir Putin. In a meeting with the Biden administration, the Polish deputy foreign minister said, and I quote, "Poland considers this project to be detrimental to the security of not only Ukraine, not only Central Europe, but also to the security of the whole of Europe, making the EU dependent on Russian gas." If we give a damn about our friends in Poland, if we give a damn about our friends in Ukraine, if we give a damn about our friends in Europe, don't allow Joe Biden to allow Vladimir Putin to point this weapon at the heart of Europe. In a joint statement signed by representatives of the Foreign Affairs Committees of the parliaments of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Czech Republic, Ireland, Poland, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom, here's what the Estonian Foreign Affairs Committee stated, quote, "Countering malign Russian aggression is in the vital national security interest of the whole of NATO, the EU, and our partners in Central and Eastern Europe. And that, quote, Nordstream 2 is a geopolitical project geared towards expanding Russia's influence on Europe through energy dominance." Madam President, a question for every member of this Senate to decide. Do we care about endangering the national security, about threatening, about making our European friends subject to blackmail? Do we care about what Estonia has told us, about what Latvia has told us, about what Lithuania has told us? Do we care about the Czech Republic? Do we care about Ireland? Do we care about Poland? Do we care about Ukraine? Do we care about the United Kingdom? Well, our actions can decide that. Unfortunately, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have decided that our European allies, their security is not of sufficient concern to them. And instead, they have actively given this pipeline to Vladimir Putin. My Democratic colleagues, and indeed the vast majority of American lawmakers, also understand the precise danger of blackmail and coercion posed by Nord Stream 2. In 2018, Senator Coons, my Democratic colleague from Delaware, said quite plainly that, quote, "We have to work with Europe to reduce its dependence on Russian energy exports, and in particular, to convince it to discontinue the Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Russia to Germany." Senator Coons continued, quote, "As long as Russia dominates the provision of energy to Europe, it will continue to hold a veto over many European policies, and it will be in a position to weaken and marginalize countries like Poland and Ukraine." Madam President, Senator Coons was right in 2018, and what he said is right today. Joe Biden is committing a generational political blunder, a catastrophic mistake that hurts American national security and that hurts European security. Congress has repeatedly passed sanctions targeting Nord Stream 2, targeting Russia's corrupt energy market more broadly. Those sanctions, especially CATSA and PISA, and I'm going to discuss in greater detail later today, the specific sanctions legislation that are on the U.S. books, that Joe Biden is ignoring, that he is flouting, that he is disregarding, that he is refusing to enforce. Those sanctions impose mandatory sanctions. This body, Congress as a whole, Democrats and Republicans, past administrations, everyone has worked together not just to counter Russia, but specifically to prevent Putin from being able to leverage energy as a geopolitical weapon. The Biden administration, however, tells us they have a better solution than both houses of Congress, a better solution than following U.S. law. Instead of imposing sanctions to stop the pipeline, they tell us, they've worked out a deal with Germany that they promise will prevent Putin from being able to use energy as a weapon. It's the best of both worlds, they say. They don't have to use sanctions, and they still solve the problem of Russian energy blackmail. President Biden said, quote, Chancellor Merkel and I are absolutely united in our conviction that Russia must not be allowed to use energy as a weapon to coerce or threaten its neighbors. Those are nice sentiments, if they weren't accompanied with Joe Biden giving a multi-billion-dollar generational gift to Putin to do exactly what President Biden just said he didn't want Putin to do. Here's how an official from the Biden State Department described the, quote, deal. Quote, there's a clear commitment on the part of the United States and Germany in this statement that should Russia attempt to use energy as a weapon, and as an aside, they've done so over and over and over and over again in the past, should Russia attempt to use energy as a weapon, Germany will take action at the national level and press for effective measures at the European net level, including sanctions to limit Russian export capabilities to Europe in the energy sector, and that includes gas and/or other economically relevant sectors. Okay, so Madam President, understand what they're saying. If and when Russia does what they've done in the past over and over again, if they do, one of the reasons they want Nord Stream 2 is to exercise economic blackmail. If and when they do that, Germany's going to send a really stern letter to the European Union. One of my favorite movies that Heidi and I have watched many times is a movie called Team America. It's a comedy. It's done by the creators of the movie South Park. It's a movie that involves puppets. I will give a warning. It is a movie with an enormous amount of profanity in it. It is also one of the most side-splittingly funny movies ever made. In Team of America, they talk about Hans Blix and the tool of sending a stern letter to the United Nations. And the movie Team America, understandably, ridicules that as being utterly ineffective. In the case of that movie, it was North Korea. But in the case of Putin, I assure you, Vladimir Putin has not lost 1 minute's sleep worrying about Germany's letter to the European Union. Once Nord Stream 2 goes online, it will become a dominant source of energy for Europe. Putin knows this, Merkel knows this, Biden knows this. Turning off Nord Stream 2, which Germany has suggested, once we're addicted to the crack, we'll just turn it off when we don't want it anymore. That would be suicidal, which Putin knows, and he's counting on. It is as empty and hollow a threat as ever been uttered on the international stage. And even worse, we already know that it's a hollow threat, because Putin has already, in just the last few days, crossed the line into using energy as a weapon. So we don't have to go back to 2006. We don't have to go back to 2009. Let's go back to last week. In just the last week, it has become clear that Putin has been turning down gas exports to Europe to coerce our allies into dropping opposition to Nord Stream 2. The blackmail is open and it is brazen. Russian and Gazprom officials have said, if Germany and the EU approve Nord Stream 2 coming online, then the Russians will turn exports back up. On Friday, more than 40 members of the European Parliament called for an investigation of the coercion, saying Gazprom was driving up prices to, quote, pressure the European Union into speeding Nord Stream 2 activation. So I want you to pause and reflect. The Biden administration's claim to prevent Nord Stream 2 being used as a weapon for energy blackmail is if Russia ever does it, Germany will stand up to them. Russia's doing it right now. Not in 2006. Well, yes, they did in 2006. Not in 2009. Well, yes, they did in 2009. Today, last week. And they're not hiding it. They're saying, we're going to cut off your energy until you approve Nord Stream 2. How exactly is the Biden administration claiming they're going to prevent the malign use of this pipeline? They are literally surrendering to blackmail right now. For no reason. And you know, sadly, the reason, for the past 9 months, I've had conversations with just about every senior Biden State Department nominee in my office over and over and over again about Nord Stream 2. Almost to a person, the nominees agree. Nord Stream 2 would be terrible. It would be disastrous. It would be bad for America. It would be bad for Europe. It would be good for Russia. They all agree that. By the way, Tony Blinken, the Secretary of State, said so vociferously in his confirmation hearing. And he said so even more vociferously sitting on the couch in my office. They all admit this. So why then would Biden have committed this disastrous mistake? Sadly, I think there are two reasons. One, the Biden team entered office with an almost pathological revulsion at anything the previous administration did. If the Trump administration did it, it must be wrong and must be reversed. Now listen, Madam President, none of us in this chamber are naive. We understand politics. We understand that when one party takes over from the other party, they often reverse policy decisions. That's not unusual. Obama reversed decisions of the Bush administration. Trump reversed decisions of the Obama administrations. And there are a whole lot of decisions of the Trump administration that sadly, from my perspective, Biden is reversing. As a general matter, that's why we have elections, and there are differences between the policy positions between the two parties. But the Biden team is further than that. It is almost a pathological, if Trump did it, it must be bad. Never mind that the Trump administration did this only after the Congress came together in an extraordinary moment of bipartisan unity and passed this as mandatory legislation. In my office over and over again with just about every senior Biden State Department nominee, I asked them, please, don't turn one of the biggest foreign policy victories of the last several years into one of the biggest foreign policy defeats of the last several years. The reports came out, actually, that state tried to honor its commitment, that state, the Department of State, in the interagency process, argued for, let's follow the law, let's impose the sanctions. And what the public reports have suggested is the Biden White House, the political operatives in the Biden White House, overruled state. So even though state knew the right policy was shut down the Putin pipeline, and the wrong policy was turn it into the Biden-Putin pipeline, the Biden White House desperately wanted to stamp their imprimatur on this. Because if it was done under President Trump, they were going to reverse it. The second reason is the Biden foreign policy team, for whatever reason, has a deep and abiding interest in giving to Germany whatever it is they want. Now look, Germany is an important friend and ally. We work together closely with Germany on economic matters, on diplomatic matters. We have long and positive relationships with our friend and ally, Germany. That doesn't mean we agree with everything the Germans do, any more than we agree with everything any other ally of ours does. Indeed, I will point out in the past week, the Biden administration precipitated the French withdrawing their ambassador from America, an extraordinary moment, which I will point out at least illustrates that we have a history of having disagreements, and sometimes serious disagreements, with our friends and allies. But one friend of mine has a phrase, he puts it, that the Biden foreign policy establishment, they sleep with votive candles of Angela Merkel under their beds. That they view Chancellor Merkel as someone who must be surrendered to, acquiesced to, no matter what. Never mind that Chancellor Merkel has an extremely limited tenure in office. She is on her way out. Never mind that the next successor government in Germany may well decide that they don't even want Nordstream 2. This Biden foreign policy team, perhaps as a farewell gift to Angela Merkel, have decided that President Biden should surrender to Putin. That makes no sense. That is dangerous. It's harmful to Europe. It's harmful to Germany. It's harmful to America. And it helps Russia. We're going to have an extended period of time to continue to discuss these matters. But at this point, I see that Senator Shaheen is preparing to speak. So I yield the floor to Senator Shaheen.